How's it going, guys? And welcome to the showdown between the Empire, led by Volkmar the Grim, atop his mighty pimp chariot, and the forces of Chaos, who are going to be led by the KFC Lord himself. So guys, let's jump right into this match and take a look at some of these builds. So on the front line, I do have a combination of greatswords and unbreakable infantry. So the greatswords will do okay against most Chaos troops. They trade very well with Forsaken and Marauders. However, they do usually lose to the more elite Chaos infantry. But with the support of Volkmar the Grim atop his mighty chariot, they can actually hold their own. So Volkmar the Grim does give the Grand Shield of Faith to all nearby troops in a 55-meter radius, which gives them a 22% ward save. And on top of that, he does give the Grand Hammer of Sigmar. So again, these are activatable. It's not going to be a perpetual effect, but they're still very strong. So it gives 26 melee attack. This one gives ward save. And also the Grand Soulfire. This can actually, there's a lot of kind of tricks you can do with this. So for example, if you're expecting a Fate of Buna on your very expensive cav, you can have Volkmar riding with him, and then you pop this right when the Fate of Buna is going off, and it will give them 90% resistance against magic. So it's actually pretty strong. But again, Volkmar should be good for kind of terror routing a lot of these low tier troops like the Chaos Marauders, as well as, well, not the Forsaken, because Forsaken do have Frenzy, so they're going to be immune to Psychology initially. But once their Frenzy does wear off, they can be terror routed just like everyone else. So that's my front line, and the Tattersouls aren't going to be winning any beauty contests here, but they're basically just meant to kind of hold the front line and allow my guns in the back to do their thing. So this was a bit of a thematic build for my stream where I wanted to go Crusade. So I do have the Pimp Chariot here, as I mentioned before, and then I also have the Knights of the Blazing Sun. So Knights of the Blazing Sun are actually decent at riding down Forsaken and Marauders. These guys have massive shock damage, 40 melee attack. On top of that, they have a charge bonus of 78, which is quite huge. So if you can use these guys to kind of ride down, Forsaken and just Marauders and lightly armored troops, they can do some serious work. Got one group of spears, the Silver Bullets, as well as the Sterling's Revenge, and of course the Royal Outdoor of Griffites. So these guys cause fear and terror, and they trade pretty well with the the Chaos Knights. Although Chaos Knights still can do some pretty good work against them. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. So for my opponent over here, he does have Marauder Horsemen here. He has one here as well. For his main line, he has a bunch of Chaos Marauders, and going wide against the Empire is definitely the way to go. Just kind of compromise their back line. But Chaos Marauders, he does also have great weapons, a couple groups of Forsaken, the Warp Chicken, and let's see what abilities he has. So Warp Chicken has Plague of Rust and the Transmutational Blade, and I don't think he has any bombardment abilities. But you guys will see that the metal shifting actually got changed to Mortal Empires. So it used to be just a perpetual 4% across your entire army, but it's now 10% armor piercing, plus 10% weapon damage whenever he's casting. On the flanks, he does have two Chaos Knights with lances, so this is going to be very tough for me to handle. I mean, the Royal Altar of Griffites are very tough, but fighting two Chaos Knights plus Poison Warhounds is going to be real nasty. So guys, without further ado, let's get this show on the road. So over here, it looks like there was a bit of skirmishing going on. My opponent doing a very good job of harassing with these Marauder Horsemen. I was able to kind of fend them off with my Silver Bullets, but I'm still taking some casualties on these Flagellants, who are horrible at taking missile damage. So for my caster, I do have a Light Wizard with Nets of Amnitok, definitely very good against Chaos. So hopefully it'll hold. But honestly, I was feeling pretty confident about the frontline engagement, but what was really stressing me out was what's going on in the flank. I was a little bit out of position. I was trying to reposition my army to get up on this hill here, but he was actually pressuring me really aggressively. So I had to pull in these Knights of the Blazing Sun to kind of intercept and protect my my Sterling's Revenge here. And I think he still has some Marauders in the back line kind of trolling about, and they're very quick. They have 90 speed, so they can outrun Empire Cav, which are pretty slow. Like Knights of the Blazing Sun have like 90 speed, and then I think Demogryph Knights are like, or Knights of the Blazing Sun have like 66 speed, I think, and these guys have 75. And Knights of the Blazing Sun, let's see what they got. Are those Knights of the Blazing Sun? No, those are Sterling's Revenge. So the Knights of the Blazing Sun actually have 71. So you can see that the Chaos Knights are going to be charging in, getting a really good charge of my troops here. So very well played by my opponent. I was a little bit out of position, but I do come in here with my Royal Altar of Griffites, who will do some pretty good work against these Chaos Knights. The Forsaken in the front line are going to be engaging. Looks like the Warp Chicken is going to be trying to surround Volkmar, but Volkmar atop his chariot is very strong. And you can also see that the Grand Soulfire bombardment is going to be bombing these Forsaken. And in this matchup, Warp Chicken does magic damage, and Volkmar has massive resistance against magic. Right now he has 130% with that Grand Soulfire, but I think his base is like 45. So he's very tough to take down, for the Warp Chicken at least. He also works like a chariot, so you want to be running over infantry. I'm definitely doing a pretty good job of kind of blobbing up my opponent's forces here. You can see my Flagellants and Greatswords are going to be colliding right here with these Chaos Warriors, which I think Chaos Warriors would probably win 1-1. It's hard to say, because Chaos Warriors do have better weapon strength and better combat stats, but also these Greatswords do have an anti-infantry bonus, and you can see they're getting the Grand Shield of Faith from Volkmar, which is going to help out quite a bit. But Warp Chicken coming in, just dunking on those Greatswords, man, doing some heavy lifting. So in the back, we have a pretty wild fight. You can see these Sterling's Revenge are just, capping these Marauders back here. So I was able to secure my back line a little bit, but again, this fight's just out of control. My Spearmen are being munched on by Marauders. The Chaos Warhounds and all these other troops are just outnumbering me. I was able to kill one group of Chaos Knights with Lances who actually got terrified due to the Royal Altar of Griffites. But my Knights of the Blazing Sun are pretty much trash canned, and the Royal Altar of Griffites are taking a ton of damage, and it's not enough resources to actually stop this entire backline engagement. So the Sterling's Revenge right here are being feasted on by Warhounds. I probably should have just turned and fought, because Sterling's Revenge are really good melee. They have 38 melee attack and 35 melee defense. Yeah, so I definitely should have just turned and fought right there. A bit of a mistake on my part. his Chaos Knights were about to come over and kind of, just ramshackle these guys and ride them down. So I actually did use a net of Amnitok to snare them in place, which was definitely pretty solid. But you guys, it's really hard to stop the Warp Chicken. He also has massive missile resist, so you can't really shoot him with guns. You have to stop him with, physical strength. But the Warp Chicken's going to be hunting my guns back there, so very well played to my opponent. And by the way, guys, my opponent I'm playing this game, his name is actually, he's playing under an alias right now, but his name is actually Janet on occasion. He has a YouTube channel. He's an awesome guy. He's currently doing a head-to-head campaign with the Gobbo King and puts up a lot of great multiplayer battles. So right here you can see, and there'll also be a link out in the comment section after the game. So the Marauder Horsemen over here getting some pretty good throwing axes right here on the greatswords. Definitely some really good use of those armor-piercing axes. And it looks like some of my guns have been able to stabilize. So the Sterling's Revenge are going to be coming back online and hopefully providing some overwatch to this part of the battlefield. But really, this is kind of the epicenter of things. You can see that my Royal Altdorf Griffites do get the transmutation of lead, which is going to lower their melee attack and other stats. And man, it's a tough fight. But the Chaos Knights are also getting a little bit low. This one group only has, I think, like 15 or 16 models left. Yeah, 13 models. And we're finally able to kind of stabilize a little bit. The infantry fight actually went in my favor. My greatswords and other troops were able to crush those Marauders in Forsaken. But, I thought these guys were broken off, but unfortunately a lot of his troops are rallying, and the Forsaken are really quick. And again, I made the mistake of not just turning and fighting, because had I just turned and charged them, I probably could have gotten a pretty good trade there. So I definitely need to kind of give more credence to the Sterling's Revenge. Up on the high ground, Volkmar the Grim is trying to chase these guys down. I actually did just miss a net of Amnitok. I think I accidentally casted it over there. Definitely a bummer. But I'm able to push back the, the Chaos Knights here. The bounce power is still very even. If anything, it might be slightly in my favor because I still do have a lot of troops left. And of course, Volkmar is in full health. He does have the Jade Griffin, which allows him to regenerate. And he's going to be really tough to kill. My opponent doesn't really have too much anti-large or things that are going to be efficient against him. I suppose the Marauder Horsemen might be, but they're very low on ammunition as well. So you can see my Empire Goon Squad here is kind of going to be coming to try and force off the Warp Chicken. The Silver Bullets are going to be routing here to the KFC Lord himself. And then it looks like my other guns are going to be compromised as well. So very well played to my opponent here. On the low ground, we do have a fight between the Greatswords and the last of the Chaos Infantry, and the Greatswords really do a great job against Forsaken. Forsaken are kind of like glass cannon, so against the anti-infantry bonus, plus the armor of these guys, they can't really hold very well. So I figured I'm going to leave my two Flagellants here to kind of hold these guys up, and I need the Greatswords up in this fight on the high ground. This is where everything is going to be decided, the fate of Middle-earth. And he does have some groups of these Marauder Horsemen here, but my guns are actually rallying, so hopefully I'll turn them around in a moment and fight. And this is it. This is going to be the final showdown. So I'm going to be charging in here, trying to catch these guys, but it looks like he's going to pull back. But he is having a few of these Chaos Knights drag down, which is good. But I'm starting to get a little bit more thin on my forces. Every time the Warp Chicken comes in, he karate chops a few of my troops. Definitely quite a menace, guys. But Volkmar is just holding it down. The Grand Shield of Faith and also the Grand Hammer of Sigmar is going to be augmenting the stats of all my surviving troops here. And the Grand Soulfire actually doing a lot of damage here in the fourth quarter. But I do have some troops rallying. You can see these Marauder Horsemen are fighting against the Silver Bolts, and it's actually a bit of an even fight, which is pretty funny. The Marauder Horsemen, yeah, they have much better stats though. 26, 24, and 24, and actually Silver Bullets, being a regiment of renown, wow, they actually have 27 melee defense, which is pretty good for handgunners. I have some spearmen, so hopefully these guys will get up here. It looks like they are going to be helping. And I get a great banishment, so I wish I could have shown that to you guys. But I get a banishment, and it just roasts those Chaos Knights. It actually does a ton of damage to pretty much anything it hits, except single targets, of course. But Warp Chicken is getting chased by my Light Sorcerer. You can see my Infantry Blob just trying to, march around, and a bit of a crusade going on. Volkmar is leading the boys on his chariot. Just, hunting these Chaos Knights. You can see he's just charging into these Chaos Knights. So funny. I mean, getting Volkmar in a chariot is always fun. Against Chaos, it's a little bit of a risky pick, because if they do bring Shaggoths, like, he can get taken out really quickly. But again, if they go Shaggoths, they're very expensive, so they're not going to have as many, backline pressure tools. And then your handgunners and your nets can really take down the Shaggoths, so there's a little bit of give and take there. But the Marauders and Greatswords on the low ground are putting up a great fight and getting charged here. You can see it's a bit of a desperate fight for life and death here. 56 Greatswords, they're still confident, and Marauder Horsemen have really pitiful combat stats, so once their charge bonus wears off here, they're definitely going to get massacred. A nice transmutation of lead coming down from my opponent. And you can see Warp Chicken is doing a really good job of kind of, riding off my gunners up here, making sure I don't have any Overwatch support. So it's really going to come down to just a final climactic battle. A nice Chaos Knight charge coming in here, sending some of my Chaos, or not my, that Greatsword, like, he got hit by the horse, and he literally, like, went straight up in the air instead of, like, flying the direction he should be flying, which is pretty great. But I don't know. I don't think he can stop Volkmar. And you guys can see the bounce power is starting to tilt to my favor. I'm taking a ton of damage from these cycle charges on most of my infantry. My Greatswords on the low ground here, the 48 Greatswords have actually won this infantry fight. You can see these guys are broken and I'm probably almost shattered as well. So basically it's just Volkmar versus the world right now. And Volkmar, he doesn't have the best AP values, but in sustained combat with all those like ward saves against magic, so Warp Chicken is going to do absolutely nothing against him really. And he's probably going to slowly like tear out a lot of these troops. And I do have those unbreakable troops, which, I was a little bit on the fence about bringing Tattersouls in this matchup and, Flagellants in general, but they actually really paid their dues. And I mean, they're fighting tooth and nail next to Sigmar Sons. You can see there's 3 Sigmar Sons left, and there's only a couple Flagellants, looks like 15. But with Volkmar's augmentations, they're actually doing a really good job. My greatswords here are kind of wavering a little bit, but they're still cutting down these Chaos Knights. The greatswords do only have, I think, oh, didn't mean to do that. They only have 30 weapon strength, but they do have really good AP values. So the Chaos Knights are going to be forced off right here, guys. And man, such an incredibly close battle. Warp Chicken is still riding over here and just going full KFC on these greatswords and just kind of giving them trouble. And you guys know from the olden days of the dwarves how hard it is to capture, to capture the Warp Chicken. He's so tough to catch. It's like that scene in the Rocky movie when Mick makes Rocky catch the chicken. It's basically like that. It's like you have to chase him down. Here comes the last stand here. Volkmar is going to lead in on his chariot. The War Altar of Sigmar and a Grand Soulfire Bombardment is going to be coming down, which is going to do a ton of damage against all these troops, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, you can see it's just teeing off on all these like low-tier infantry like Chaos Warriors and these Poison Hounds. And it looks like a lot of my opponent's troops, Janet on Occasion's forces, are going to be shattering right here. So the Warp Chicken still could put up a pretty good fight, and he can definitely work on this Light Wizard. And I really like his use of the Transmutation of Lead. He's done a really good job, like all game, just kind of debuffing my troops in really pivotal points in the battle. So the War Altar of Sigmar now is just going to be basically fighting the Warp Chicken. It's going to be the final showdown. But it looks like I do also have this Light Wizard who, 200 plus weapon strength against a very lightly armored Warp Chicken. It definitely will be helpful. But pretty much the rest of my troops are all routing off. The Greatswords only have 19 models. The Sons of Sigmar and all of these other guys are pretty much done for. I mean, they're probably honestly going to get killed by splash damage from the Warp Chicken. So that's pretty much it, guys. Some Chaos Knights coming back. It looks like there are 13 models here. Everything else from my opponent is shattering. It looks like these Marauders will probably, just tear out as soon as they get in here. But Warp Chicken actually doing a little bit of work right here, but I do get a really nice net on him. And as you guys know, Chariots like Volkmar, he does magic damage as well. So Sartorial does have magic damage. So it's basically just like two wet noodles hitting each other. So we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit. You can see he actually does start focusing down my Light Wizard. Despite the combat, my Light Wizard actually gets broken off. And now it's basically this Chariot just going to be ramrodding this chicken. And yeah, it's basically just taking forever. I mean, neither of them do much damage to each other. And because Chariots are pretty horrible in like head-to-head combat, but the Grand Hammer of Sigmar, hopefully augmenting my melee attack so I can actually hit him. You can see I hit him for like barely anything. Then my Light Wizard comes back in to rescue the day. And he only has 200 HP, so the Mighty Warp Chicken is going to be run down by the War Altar of Sigmar. You can see, he has fallen to Volkmar atop his chariot. So an incredibly close game. Very, very fun. And, it was a bit of a thematic Crusader build. But the Greatswords, like, all jokes aside, and even in a competitive sense, like the War Altar of Sigmar, usually the Chaos front line will beat the Empire, like with Forsaken and great weapons and all that stuff. But Volkmar was able to just dumpster these Chaos Warriors as well as these other Forsaken with just kind of his presence there and the fear and terror and the buffs. That was kind of cool. You really need to worry about Kolek, though, because Kolek would do a ton of work. But again, Kolek is counterpicked by handgunners and nets. So there is some give and take there. It'd be interesting to experiment a little bit more with Volkmar. But yeah, it was quite a bit of fun, like my opponent's build. But yeah, very well played to Janet on Occasion. Make sure to go check out his YouTube channel. There will be a link in the comment section below. And guys, thanks again for watching. Have an excellent night, guys, and take care.